The theater of violence continues, but this time with a different ending. The family of the mask vendor, who was reportedly shot dead on Tuesday, has clarified that he is still alive, contradicting earlier reports of his death. His father, Jonah Kariuki Nyambura, said that the bullet had gone through his head just above the ear. Against all odds, against the calculated brutality of those who believed they could erase another life with impunity, Boniface Kariuki survived. The 22-year-old hawker, who was shot point-blank while selling masks on Moi Avenue, has become an unlikely symbol of resilience in a nation where such survival feels miraculous. Boniface Mwangi Kariuki lies fighting for his life in the intensive care unit at Kenyatta National Hospital, his survival against the odds, serving as both testament to human resilience and indictment of a system that treats such violence as routine. His father, Jonah Kariuki Nyambura, confirmed that while his son is alive, he remains in critical condition with serious injuries from the bullet that passed through his head. The immediate aftermath of the shooting revealed something profound about ordinary Kenyans and their relationship to state violence. As protesters demonstrated following the death of Albert Ojwang while in police custody, citizens witnessed police brutality being committed in real time during the Justice for Albert Ojwang protest, and their response was instinctively humanitarian. Videos circulated showing the horrific moment when two officers confronted Boniface as he hawked masks along Moi Avenue. Eyewitness Edwin Kagiya, who vends alongside Boniface, recounted the chilling sequence. "We were doing business as usual. He was vending with me. Then a cop came, slapped him, and even though he raised his hands in surrender, he was shot." The shocking footage shows one officer striking him with a rifle butt, while another slaps him before shooting him at close range, their actions contrasting sharply with protesters who rushed to carry the wounded vendor to safety. The official response has been swift, but only because the shooting was captured on camera and witnessed by journalists. Inspector General Douglas Kanja has ordered the immediate arrest and arraignment of the uniformed police officer captured on video assaulting and shooting Boniface. According to police spokesman Muchiri Nyaga, following this incident, the Inspector General of the National Police Service ordered the immediate arrest and arraignment of the officer involved. The said police officer has since been arrested. This represents a departure from the usual pattern of police shootings in Kenya, where officers typically face no consequences for their actions. Yet the arrest of one officer cannot obscure the systematic nature of the violence being perpetrated against Kenyan citizens. Despite public outrage and protests, Kenyan police officers continue to use inhumane, brutal, and sometimes fatal methods with little consequence. The shooting of Boniface Kariuki was not an aberration, but part of a documented pattern of state violence that has intensified rather than diminished despite promises of reform. The statistics paint a grim picture of institutionalized brutality. 1 in 3 Kenyans have experienced police abuse or harassment. Over 500 killings by police in Kenya have been documented between 2019 and 2021. These numbers represent more than statistics. They represent families destroyed, communities terrorized, and a social contract between citizens and state that has been shredded by systematic violence. The current crisis extends far beyond individual incidents of brutality. In response, the police unleashed unprecedented violence, abductions, mass killings, arbitrary arrests, deployment of more lethal crowd control weapons, and intimidation of the media and human rights organizations, all carried out with impunity and disregard for court orders. What Kenya is witnessing is not merely police misconduct, but a coordinated campaign of state repression that uses law enforcement as a weapon against dissent. The shooting of Boniface Kariuki occurred during protests against the very phenomenon he became a victim of, creating a meta-commentary on the state of Kenyan policing. In addition to fatal murders and injuries to unarmed demonstrators, the police have been accused of rampantly abducting activists and citizens critical of the government and high-ranking officials, a trend Kenyan President William Ruto promised to stop and has failed to do. The government's inability or unwillingness to control its own security forces has created a crisis of legitimacy that extends to the highest levels of power. The international documentation of Kenya's police violence problem is extensive and damning. Human Rights Watch and other organizations have chronicled years of systematic abuse, yet the pattern continues unabated. The shooting of Boniface Kariuki was captured by Associated Press photographers, creating a visual record that will likely join the archive of documented police brutality in Kenya. But photographic evidence has never been sufficient to drive meaningful reform. Political leaders across the spectrum have begun to acknowledge that Kenya stands at a crossroads. Jubilee Party Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni has warned that Kenya is on a destructive path if police brutality continues unchecked. But such warnings feel increasingly hollow when they are not backed by concrete action to dismantle the systems that enable such violence. The broader implications of this crisis extend beyond law enforcement. When citizens cannot trust those sworn to protect them, when street vendors can be shot for conducting legal business, when teachers can be murdered for expressing opinions, the social fabric of a nation begins to unravel. Kenya's police force has become an occupying army in its own country, treating citizens as enemies to be subdued rather than people to be protected. Boniface Kariuki's survival has created an uncomfortable reality for those who would prefer such incidents to disappear into the statistics of the disappeared and the dead. As his father Jonah maintains a vigil at Kenyatta National Hospital saying, "He is still not in good condition. I am deeply saddened by his condition, but I am hopeful that he will recover." The young vendor's fight for life threatens to maintain public attention on a crisis that the political establishment would prefer to manage through public relations rather than genuine reform. Senator Okia Omtata, who visited the hospital, condemned what he termed police brutality, stating, "Boniface is alive but fighting for his life. We pray for a speedy recovery and regret the lawlessness sanctioned and sponsored by rogue state agents." The pattern is clear and accelerating. From Albert Ojwang's murder in custody to Boniface Kariuki's shooting on the street, Kenya's security forces have declared war on their own people. The resignation of Deputy Inspector General Lagat has done nothing to change the behavior of officers on the ground, suggesting that the problem runs deeper than individual leadership and reflects systemic issues that require comprehensive overhaul rather than cosmetic changes. The fact that it took international attention and photographic evidence to secure the arrest of Kariuki's shooter reveals the inadequacy of existing accountability mechanisms. How many other vendors, protesters, and ordinary citizens have been shot, beaten, or killed without cameras present to document their suffering? The visible violence represents only the tip of an iceberg of systematic brutality that continues largely unchecked across the country. Kenya's trajectory is becoming increasingly clear. A government that promised to champion the common person has unleashed its security forces against the very people it claimed to represent. The hustler nation has become a hunting ground where hustlers are prey. The bottom-up economic model has been replaced by a bottom-up targeting system where those at the bottom face violence simply for existing in public spaces. Boniface Kariuki's survival is a miracle, but it should not be treated as a victory. The fact that a young man selling masks can be shot in the head by police officers in broad daylight in the presence of journalists represents a fundamental breakdown of the rule of law. His survival does not diminish the gravity of the attempt on his life or the systematic violence it represents. As Kenya continues to grapple with its police violence crisis, the international community watches with growing concern. The pattern of brutality, the culture of impunity, and the government's inability to control its own security forces are creating conditions for broader instability that could have regional implications. The question facing Kenya is not whether reform is needed, but whether it is possible within existing structures. The shooting of Boniface Kariuki, like the murder of Albert Ojwang, represents a system that has declared war on its own people. Until that fundamental reality is acknowledged and addressed, survival will continue to feel miraculous, and justice will remain elusive for the vast majority of Kenyans who cannot rely on international media to document their suffering. The mask vendor lived, but the system that tried to kill him remains intact and continues to claim new victims daily. His survival is a reprieve, not a resolution, in a crisis that demands nothing less than the complete transformation of how Kenya's security forces relate to the people they are meant to serve.